Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I am going to be talking about all the books I've read so far in 2021. Since I haven't posted any videos this year, I haven't done any wrap-ups this year. And I read some pretty good books, so I just want to run through all the books I've read. I have read 31 books so far this year, which is actually my favorite number. So this is the perfect time to be doing this. But I'm not going to talk about the April books I've read so far because I will be doing an April wrap-up now that I am back on YouTube. So I'm not going to go too in-depth with these books because there are so many. I'll just tell you my rating, if I like them, the gist of them. You know how it goes. But yes, let's get started. I'm also really not gonna have fun editing this because most of the books I read through my library on Kindle, so I don't own them, so I'm gonna have to do the little picture thing here. But the first book I read in 2021 I do own, and it was a reread, and that is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is book 1 in this series. It's about teenagers that work with the FBI to profile serial killers, and that is like my dream job. I went to school and I want to be a profiler. So I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, just like I did the first time. Absolutely loved it, and I reread this so I could continue on with the series. And the next book I read was Killer Instinct, which is book 2 in the series, and I also gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I am just in love with this series. After the first one ended, I didn't know how the series would continue because the first one wrapped up, but it was amazing, a new case, wonderful, we love it. And the third book I read was All In by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the third book in the series. This is probably my favorite book in the series, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, of course. And then after that, I read the fourth book in the series. This is the last book, Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes once again. Of course I gave it 5 stars. I gave this whole series 5 stars. I absolutely love it, and the cases are just so fascinating. I could read about this for ever. I know Jennifer Lynn Barnes is a professor in psychology, so she has an in-depth look into all of these cases and the criminal mind and stuff, which you could tell through her writing. I absolutely loved it. And then to finish that off, I read 12, which is a short story in this world by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, anything I read about this world and this series would probably be 5 stars. Next, I read The Sleigh Bells Chalet by Jennifer Griffith. This is a Christmassy book. I love Christmassy books. This guy, he is an equestrian. He rides horses. He's a horse rider, racer person. What is that called? A jockey. He's a jockey. And something tragic happens to his horse, so he goes to the chalet to get a break, and then of course it's a Hallmark Christmassy movie, so things ensue. I gave this one 2 stars though. I didn't really like the relationship. I couldn't get past the fact that the main guy was a jockey, and it just like, I don't know, it just did not mesh well with me, so 2 stars. The next book I read was an e-arc from NetGalley, and that is Our Last Echoes by Kate Alice Marshall. This follows a girl who is going to this island because she knows that there have been mysterious disappearances for a very long time on this island, and her mother actually disappeared on this island, so she goes there to investigate. Crazy things start happening. There's a fog that's like on the island, and people say lock your doors, stay out of the fog. I really liked this one, and I think it was so creepy and atmospheric, and I think this would do really well in a movie. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Crank Ballast by James Dashner. Now this is a short story following Newt's perspective in the Maze Runner series. I personally love the Maze Runner series, and Newt is my favorite character, but I felt like in the story we already knew a lot of what had happened, so it didn't feel like a whole lot of new information, but I still gave it 3 stars because I do love Newt, and it was fun being back in this world. The next book I read was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This was my first time to ever read a Riley Sager book, which was one of my goals for this year, and I am so happy I finally read it. It was so good. It involves this girl who goes to stay in this apartment, and she gets paid to stay in this apartment, and it sounds too good to be true, and it actually kind of is too good to be true. It is a thriller. I just really loved it, and because of this book I started getting more into thrillers this year. Had such a great time, and because of this I decided to read all the rest of Riley Sager's books, and I give this one 4 out of 5 stars. And following that, I read The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. So this is about a girl who went to camp when she was younger, and 3 girls went missing while she was there, and she told a lie about it, and now it's decades later. She is a grown-up, and she is going back to revisit that camp. I did like this one, but not as much as Lock Every Door. I felt this one was a little bit slower, but that ending really got me, and I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. And the next book I read was The Heir by Kira Cass. This is book 4 in the selection series, I think book 4, which is like the first book in like the sequel series because it doesn't follow America directly. It follows America's Daughter. I love the series, completely obsessed. America's Daughter is having her own selection. I didn't enjoy it as much as the original selection series, but I still loved it and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read in January was The Shadow War by Lindsay Smith. I read this as an e-arc from NetGalley. This one is kind of hard to explain. It is a historical fiction retelling. Basically, this guy has figured out how to hit the frequency to get into the shadow world and use these monsters, but on the other hand, the Nazis are also trying to figure out how to do that so they can take over the world. So this guy is trying to take down the shadow world while also trying to take down the Nazis, and it's like a whole thing. We follow a whole cast of characters, so it was kind of hard to keep it straight after a while, but I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I still really enjoyed it. I love historical fiction, especially World War II historical fiction. And moving on to February, I read 6 books. The first book I read was Carrie by Stephen King. This was my first Stephen King book and I am so excited. This was one of my goals for a very long time, to read Stephen King, and I was not disappointed. I had watched the movie before, so I knew this was about a girl, Carrie, who's in high school. She gets bullied a lot and she starts coming into her telekinetic powers. Amazing. I really liked it. I love Stephen King's writing. I did like this one a lot because it is shorter. I have read more Stephen King since then, and I have read longer ones, and sometimes the longer ones get a little slow, but I liked this one because it was short and straight to the point, and it was really intense, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Speaking of Stephen King, the next book I read was Pet Sematary by the king himself. This one I really wanted to read because my dad has only read like 3 books in his life that he remembers, and one of them he has read is Pet Sematary, so I was like, what am I doing? My dad has read this and I haven't. Basically, this follows a family. I don't even know how to describe this if you don't know, but there's a cemetery that if something is buried there, they might be coming back to life. This one was a slower one. All the action happened right at the end, and I was kind of waiting the whole time like, okay, when are people gonna start dying? You know, when you're reading Stephen King, you're expecting death, and I didn't get it until later in the book, and so it was a little bit slow, but I still gave it 3 out of 5 stars because that ending was like bam, 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 bam. And the next book I read was Final Girls by Riley Sager. This is my favorite Riley Sager book. I absolutely love it, and I think it's his first one, which is weird because I liked his first book better than all the other ones. So this follows a group of girls called the Final Girls, and they are those girls that have survived those tragic massacres, the last one standing. And so this follows one in particular, and suddenly the Final Girls start going missing. So something's happening, or is somebody attacking them? Is somebody trying to hunt them? We don't know. It's crazy. I love it. I love the whole trope of like the final girl, the last one standing. There's another book coming out by Grady Hendrix that sounds very similar to this, so I'll be interested to compare them, but I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Crown by Kira Cass. This is book 5 and the final book in the selection series. Once again, we're following America's Daughter. It just wraps up the whole series. I really enjoyed it and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read in the month of February was The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson. This is book 2 in the Remnant Chronicles. I read the first book a long time ago, so in 2020 I reread it so I could finally continue with the series. This series is so good. It follows a girl. She's a princess and she is about to be forced into this wedding that she doesn't want to be in, so she escapes, and the whole time there's 2 other point of views that are following her. One is a prince and one is an assassin, but you don't know who is who, and this is the second book. Loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The ending was really intense, and so I will be reading the third one really soon. And moving on to the last month we'll be talking about in this wrap up, March. I read 9 books. The first book I read in the month of March was The Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee. I got this as an e-arc from NetGalley. This is a Titanic retelling. If you know me, I am obsessed with the Titanic. My whole family is. I had a lot of dreams about it recently. That's besides the point. But this is a retelling that follows 2 siblings. They're twins. They are Chinese acrobats, and the girl twin sneaks on board the Titanic so she can meet back up with her brother who's working, who she hasn't seen in years, and she finds out that the Ringling brothers, I think it are, one of the owners is on the Titanic. So she wants to sneak on, perform with her brother to try to get into the circus, because at the time Chinese people couldn't get into America because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, and so the only way she could do that is if she is possibly working in the circus. But of course, you know the Titanic story. it goes down. So that is why I was reading the story, mainly for the Titanic. I wasn't too interested in the whole plot of the acrobats and the circus and like the family. Which sounds bad, but I just really love the sinking of the Titanic and the stories of those people, which I guess that's what this was. And at the end of it, I actually really enjoyed it because I found out that a lot of the Chinese passengers on the Titanic, their stories have been erased because they were not allowed to speak about it. They were basically told that they stole other people's spots if they survived, and they were not treated well. They were not allowed to be really rescued in America. As soon as they got to America, they were sent off to another country. And so this book really taught me a lot, and I really appreciated that. I love a good Titanic story. So let me see, I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. And the next book I read was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is probably tied with Final Girls as my favorite, to be honest. So this is about a girl that her dad and her mom all lived in like this massive house, this mansion, when she was little, and they fled in the middle of the night. And ever since then, her dad wrote a book saying the house was haunted. It is a lot like The Haunting of Hill House, which I just started watching. And when I was watching the show, I was like, hold on a second. But the whole time she doesn't believe that this house is haunted, so she goes back to the house to see what everything's about and try to fix it up so she can sell it, and things start going crazy. I really loved it. It was so creepy and just so atmospheric, and the twist at the end, didn't see it coming, thought I would, didn't. But I give this one a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Crush by Tracy Wolff. This is the second book in the Crave series. If you know me, I did a whole video reading Crave and I absolutely loved it. Crush, on the other hand, absolutely hated it. I hate saying that. So this book is about a girl who moves to Alaska after her parents die, and she ends up at a supernatural boarding school, and she's the only human, so she's like, what's going on? But this book, if you have watched The Vampire Diaries, this is the worst season of The Vampire Diaries, season 4. That is exactly this book. That is this whole book. Did not like it. The way it ended, I'm like, I need to continue because I need this mess to be fixed, but I also don't want to put myself through that again. So I give this one 2 out of 5 stars. Also, you know how in the beginning of The Vampire Diaries you like Elena and then you start hating her and she's the worst character ever? That happened in this book with the main girl. We're not friends right now. We have beef. We're not cool. We're not cool. The next book I read was Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. I don't even know how to explain this one. I will say that if you enjoyed the book We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, you will probably like this book. I did not like We Were Liars, therefore I did not like this book. I could appreciate this book, but I did not enjoy it. It was 2 out of 5 stars for me. Just kind of pointless. I didn't feel like there was anything to it. But if you like We Were Liars, pick this book up. You might like it. The next book I read was Horrid by Katrina Leno. So this follows this girl whose father has just died. So her and her mom are moving all the way from California to Maine to live in this abandoned house that has apparently been in the family forever, but this girl didn't even know about it. But creepy things start happening at this house. Her mom is being really, really sketchy. There is this storage room her mom told her about, but it turns out it is a little girl's bedroom. I love Katrina Leno. She is my favorite author. I have been supporting her since before debut, and so I love reading all of her books, and she just gets better and better with each book. And I love how she has like stepped into like a horror genre, because if you haven't noticed, I'm really into horror now. But yes, I really enjoyed this one and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was an e-arc from NetGalley, and that is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. So this follows 3 sisters who, when they were younger, mysteriously disappeared for a month, I think it was, and then they all showed up and they had the same like half moon, like crescent moon scar on their neck, and ever since then people are kind of weary of them. They're also like really drawn to them and they think they're witches, but they can't remember what happened in that missing month, and so there's kind of mysteries to it. I really enjoyed this one. It was so atmospheric and creepy, and also there were parts where it was like genuinely gross, but in a good way. I really enjoyed this one and I highly recommend it, especially if you're into atmospheric kind of spooky vibes. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was World War Z by Max Brooks, and I wish I hadn't read this book. So I love the movie. I love zombie things, and I have been wanting to find a zombie book for so long, and I figured since I love the movie, I would love the book. But this book was so boring, and like you wouldn't really even know it's about zombies, because it is a series of interviews with people after the fact that zombies have already happened. So the world is like kind of picking itself back up. but all it involves is like military strategies and politics. So boring. I just want to read about a man running from zombies. Where is the Brad Pitt character? He wasn't in here. You know, the movie, the whole thing is like Brad Pitt running from these zombies during the apocalypse, but the book is set after the apocalypse, talking about different political strategies. So boring. 1 out of 5 stars. Disgusting. Would not recommend. And the next book I read was Made in Korea by Sarah Sook. I really enjoyed this one, which was fun because I read it while I was in Korea, so that was kind of cool. I also read this one through NetGalley. So this follows a girl who, at her high school, she has a business selling K-beauty products, and then one day this boy moves into school and he accidentally starts selling K-beauty products as well, and so she is not happy because there is some competition. I love this one. I think it was really interesting to have a business at school because I've never heard of that ever. Let me know if your school did something like that. Mine definitely didn't. Not that I would do that because I am not a business person. So it was interesting reading about like business aspects because that just is not something that I'm really interested in. However, living in Korea with K-beauty products while reading about K-beauty products was really fascinating because I could understand a lot of that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read in March and the last book I have to talk about is Bookish and the Beast by Ashley Poston. This is book 3 in the Once Upon a Con like Geekerella series. I love this series so much. It just feels like home, and this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I always love all the characters. I had such a good time. I just love reading these books so much, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So that is everything that I have read so far in 2021. Let me know your favorite book so far this year. I would love to know. But that is it for this video. All my social media links will be down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!